MAID, medical assistance in dying, is relatively new legislation here in Canada. The initial intent seemed to be on the right track, helping those with terminal, painful condition respectfully end their lives, knowing that they did not have much more time to live. This, unfortunately, has now morphed into something a lot more sinister. As you'll see in this episode with a Canadian Armed Forces veteran, MAID is being offered to our veterans at an alarming rate that can't be coincidental. I want you to sit tight in this episode and reflect on what you're about to hear. MAID is not the only thing that is shocking in this episode. There are so many other things that are going on in the Canadian Armed Forces, in the veteran community, and in Canada in general, that it's almost hard to get a grip as to what the hell is going on. So folks, thanks again for tuning in. Sit tight for the rest of the episode, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Before we get into this really important episode of the podcast, it's time to talk business. If you've been following this show for any period of time, you've likely noticed I don't typically sell a lot on this show, but that's all about to change. Your free ride is over. So let's look at my new platform. It's called Veterans Getting Fit AF, and I can't be more excited about where this is going. So right now I'm in the community tab, and this is where we share thoughts, we share wins, workouts, nutrition, advice, and we also have the 2 Million Pounds Club where we're working towards helping 100,000 veterans lose 2 million pounds. On top of that, if you head to a classroom, you've got my world-renowned BEAST program. Well, maybe it's not world-renowned, but at least it's renowned enough in the veteran community that has been helping veterans lose weight and get fitter and stronger and dial in their testosterone levels for the last 4 years. It's all here. Call replays, expert advice from all the folks that I've spoken to on the podcast. I put it all here in one convenient spot. And on top of that, I'm constantly building out new courses. Because guess what? Hey, I'm a teacher, literally a teacher with years of experience. And now I can actually deliver my knowledge in a much better scalable platform. You also have the chance to hop on calls twice a week for now with me. And since we have so few members, if you get in now, you're basically getting one-on-one coaching for only $28 a month. It's insane. If you head to the leaderboards, this is one of my favorite things. I love gamifying stuff. And if you want to have access to prizes every month down the road, you just need to participate, like stuff, post, and you get rewarded for it. Well, I can barely speak. I'm so excited. So what do you get? You get, as soon as you sign up, a Get Lean for Summer guide. Like, that's a no-brainer. I want to get shredded for summer too. So you get the Beast Body Blueprint, which is typically $1,800. It's not. It's only a $28 a month membership. Cancel anytime. On top of that, we're going to attack things like knee, back, shoulder pain, you name it, with my nimbleness protocol. It's all in here. And not to mention, you're going to be able to develop just a more resilient, more rock-solid body that's going to be able to thrive moving into the future and connect with a bunch of other veterans that are doing the exact same thing. So hop in now. This is the introductory price. It's going to go up. So hop in now. Bring your friends. Tell them all to come in. Let's hop into this group together. Let's start sharing our knowledge, and let's start getting the veteran community harder to kill. All right, let's get into the episode. This one's a real banger, so stay tuned. Hey folks, sitting down again with Catherine Christensen from the Valor Legal Action Center and Corbin McGowan. We're going to be chatting about a very sensitive topic today, which is medical assistance in dying and how it relates to the Canadian veteran landscape. So Catherine, Corbin, welcome to the podcast. Catherine, let's start with you. Unfortunately, we keep on having conversations here on the podcast because it seems like Veterans Affairs and the Canadian government keeps on stepping in it. So let's get right into it. Medical assistance in dying. So I'm going to read from the government's website, and then maybe you can give us some context. So in February 2015, the Supreme Court of Canada ruled that Carter versus Canada, that parts of the criminal code would need to change to be consistent with the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, as the sections that prohibited medical assistance in dying would no longer be valid. The Supreme Court gave the government until June 6th to create a new law. In June 2016, the Parliament of Canada passed federal legislation that allows eligible adults in Canada to request medical assistance in dying. Okay, so that's the context. So, Catherine, can you help us out here? I'm really not well versed in this whole topic. What does this mean, and why are we sitting here with a Canadian Armed Forces veteran talking about medical assistance in dying?
Okay, so the Carter versus Canada case was a woman who had a terminal illness that was going to result in quite a extended, painful death. So she went all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada and changed the law in Canada, basically saying that she had a right to choose to have a doctor assist her in having a more peaceful death. My own background as an RN, I know that this was already sort of happening in Canada, but nobody talked about it. So the idea was, and what was advocated for, was if you were in a terminal phase of an illness that there was not going to be any chance of recovery, you could ask for assistance to receive a drug, etc., that would allow you to pass away peacefully. And if a doctor or anyone else helped you do that, then they would not be charged with murder. Or in the criminal code, it was actually illegal to assist someone with a suicide. In fact, at one point, it was you could be charged criminally for committing suicide, and then they realized that was kind of silly.
What?
Because how do you charge someone who's died?
So wait, did that mean that if you attempted and failed, you'd be charged?
Yes.
Oh, that seems very religious.
Yeah, so that got that got taken out quite some time before the whole MAID issue came up. So basically, it removed that criminal factor that if you had assistance for a death, but there were very strict criteria of who could be assisted. So take, for example, if you had a dementia patient or Alzheimer's patient, they could not consent to an assisted death because they didn't have the mental capacity for it. You also couldn't write it into your personal directive that in a certain situation you wanted assisted death. Because if a personal directive allows someone to act in your place, the legislation did not allow for that either. That's how strict the rules were.
Okay.
Then it started to get expanded under the Liberal government. And then finally, a few years ago, they decided that if you had mental health issues that you deemed to be unable to live with it, that you could be given MAID, medical assistance in dying. That the Liberals have backed down from that twice, and that legislation has not come into effect, and it's being delayed quite a bit. Where we are now, sitting with a veteran, is that it was revealed starting in 2020, 2021, that they were offering Veterans Affairs was offering veterans medical assistance in dying for mental health issues as one of their supports. Even going to the point of reassuring them that their families would be looked after and everything would be fine. Now, I've recently seen policy from the forces itself, so active duty members, that MAID is going to be an option for them. And they would then be considered to have died in the equivalent of combat. So They get the military funeral, their families get all the supports as if they died in combat. So
whoa, hold on a sec. Time out.
Yeah.
There's legislation on the table that if you get the government to kill you, you would be considered a combat death? In which war?
Equivalent of it. That your estate, etc., would all be treated as if you had died in combat. And that's not legislation, that's Canadian Armed Forces policy.
So, because a combat death, like a war death, is typically deemed heroic. Yeah. Like as you laid your life on the line, you served your country and you paid the ultimate price. Right. But they're now equating medically assisted death with a battle. I see it as a battlefield death.
Just a few weeks ago, I saw that policy that they were offering that to active duty members.
Okay, I need a while to let that sink in.
You have to understand that, and I know you do, Dave, but for your audience, they have to understand what cohort we're working with here. By the time a veteran like Corbin reaches out for help, that's a big deal because they want to tough it out. They want to do this on their own. They don't want to ask for help, especially not from Veterans Affairs because they're going to get a runaround, most likely. So by the time they reach out, then they're already vulnerable. And then you say to them, well, we can offer you MAID and don't worry about your family. We'll take care of your family for you and everything it'll be fine. That was the way it crossed the line for me. It was like, no, this is not acceptable. They should be offered proper treatment and resources spent to help them with their treatment. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter whether you're talking a physical or a mental injury. That shouldn't matter.
Yeah. I don't even know where to say. This is news to me, Catherine, this whole idea that this would even be thought of in the forces. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's bad enough that it's clearly something that Veterans Affairs now offers because, to put things in context, Corbin's not the first case of MAID being offered to veterans. He just happens to be in your sphere and you're pursuing Veterans Affairs because of the injustice, or the alleged injustice, I should say, that occurred. But now this is turning into what seems like a systemic issue. Is this some sort of an agenda that we're just not aware of? Because it seems like, and I remember this in high school, there was a case, and I can't remember it clearly enough, but I believe it was a farmer in Saskatchewan who, it was called, euthanasia. He had a daughter that was severely handicapped, in a lot of pain, and I believe he ended her life with carbon monoxide poisoning. Yes. And it was a big deal. I remember us talking about it in class, and whether you're pro or against being able to, if you want to call it mercy killing in its most brutal form. And I thought it was an interesting debate, but I didn't recognize how far this could go when a government would start to legislate this type of thing. And this seems kind of dystopian. My alarm bells are starting to ring a little bit. So from your perspective, Catherine, is this something that we're going to see more of? Is this something that is more on the radar of the politicians that are trying to implement this as a compassionate thing? Where is this going? I'm really curious, but also petrified at the same time.
One of the leading causes of death in Canada last year was MAID.
Oh wait.
And if I tell you,
say that again. One of the leading
causes
top
of death
5
in Canada was MAID. We are the world's leader in euthanasia.
So cancer, heart disease, cancer, accidents, MAID.
And how they're hiding it is they no longer put MAID on the death certificate as a cause of death. They put the disease as a cause of death. And here's the other catch. Not only have you convinced someone to have MAID, so therefore you don't have to pay for their health care, but one of the paragraphs in your consent for MAID is that you will allow your heart organs to be harvested. And we are one of the world's leading countries right now for organs, for organ transplant.
Okay.
It's brutal. I never imagined thought I'd be living in the country that could say those kind of things, but that's what's happening.
Isn't that what they do in China right now? Isn't that part of their whole program? But they're communists. So when you hear it comes out of China,
Dave.
Oh, this is awful. This is awful. Okay. Well, Catherine, thanks for giving some context to that. We'll get back to you, but I want to talk to Corbin now. And Corbin, I want to just thank you for being brave enough to come talk about your story and share it with not only the veteran community, but everybody else across the planet that wants to listen. The fact that you were offered MAID gets me a little bit prickly because you're a veteran, and I've had other veterans in the community say that they've also been offered MAID as well. And that doesn't sit well with me. So when Catherine reached out and said, well, I have Corbin here who's offered MAID, I immediately said, well, I'd love to hear his story and share it on the podcast. So this is where I'd love for you to share, your background, what was your experience like in the forces, but then ultimately, what happened? How did you end up getting offered MAID? So if we can start just from the start and how you got to the point where Veterans Affairs was offering you MAID.
Uh, yeah. Uh, so you want me to start from like when I joined in the military to all the way up?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, I'd love to hear what were your motivations for joining. First of all,
Well,
why'd you want to even get into the forces?
my father was in the forces. He was a supply tech. He was actually in Edmonton for uh, 10 years. Um, but yeah, no, my father was a big reason why I joined the military. Uh, I saw it as a good opportunity to start a career. So in 2019, August, I finally got the chance to go and ended up in Saint Jean, where I started basic, and I thought it was going to be good for me. Um, I had a fiance at the time who I'm currently married to, so it was going to be a good life.
Congrats.
I was hoping for a good life out of that. So the first platoon I got into, it was going well. Ended up getting swiped off the platoon. Just little things that got me moved to a new platoon. Um, Nothing bad I could say for the first platoon, but the second platoon, I ended up getting moved on to I forget what they call the injured side of Saint Jean, but I got a rucksack dropped on my ankle, ended up spraining it from that,
Mm-hmm.
and that was right before our ruck march, and so I got moved off that platoon, and then uh, sat in the injured parade for a bit, and then got moved on to the third platoon, and that's kind of where everything started going downhill. Um, I did well in that platoon for the 7 weeks, and then all of a sudden I got this woman accusing me of sexual assault, where I actually got arrested for that in the middle of the night at like four in the morning. I had MPs and sergeant there at my door, and they escort me down to the police cruiser, and that's where they cuff me, throw me in the back of the cruiser.
So wait, this is a fellow platoon member or a member of the
It
forces?
was another, it was a woman on another platoon.
Mm-hmm.
She was friends with one of the people on my platoon in the same pod as me. Um, so yeah, she accused me. I get arrested, brought down to the MP station, and from there I sat in the interview room for a few hours, and it was nothing felt right about the whole interaction with the MPs. But what can I do? It yeah, it was hard to sit there for a bit, and then they moved me to an actual cell to, as they put it, sleep. But they left the bright lights on the whole time. Didn't tell me how I could, if I could ask for them off. They just put me in there, and it was cold, bright. I couldn't get any sleep. Um, I actually asked to talk to a lawyer at one point, which I was told no by one of the MPs. And then finally CFNIS comes in, and they do the whole uh, they talk with me, and that that was a long day, I guess I was there for.
Mm-hmm.
It was
Sorry, Corbin, I'm just going to interrupt you there. I just want to throw this question over to Catherine. Being detained as a Canadian Armed Forces soldier, the rules still apply, right? You need to be under
Absolutely.
arrest. And therefore, if you are detained and you're not given any reason, that is a unlawful detention. Did I get that right?
Yes, and to being denied a lawyer, you cannot be denied counsel either.
Right,
the
regardless if
moment
you're
you
in the
ask.
military or not, or in the military or not, you can, even if you're in the military, you can request a civilian lawyer, correct?
Absolutely, yeah.
Right.
And
Okay.
and
Just want to clarify.
you can ask for a JAG too if the civilian lawyer is not available. You're absolutely entitled to the full rights as if you were arrested as a civilian.
Gotcha. So little whoopsie by the MPs there. No big deal, just infringing on your charter rights. But okay, Corbin, so you're in this cell. Clearly, this is not a good experience for you. So then what happened after that?
Yeah, well, I didn't even know I was allowed to, I didn't know what a military lawyer was at the time. I didn't even know I was allowed to contact one. They got me in contact with a civilian lawyer. And yeah, no, they took me out of the cell when the CFNS got there. They sat me in the same interview room and they proceeded to talk to me for, God, I don't know how long. And yeah, all I've eaten that day was an apple. Um, and I remember telling the CFNAS lady that I was tired and I just wanted this to be over with. I was I was done with being in the MP's custody. Um, but yeah, they finally released me, and from there I was taken back to the mega, and I had to sleep in one of the classrooms on a cot on the ground because my room was blocked off. So yeah, from there I still wanted to complete my course, get out of Saint Jean onto the next because I thought it'd be better. Um, but yeah, no, I got through that night, and then I was put on to CACPAR, the case awaiting uh, different abbreviation. I don't know it fully, but yeah,
Right.
I sat on there for a week, and then I was told from there they're going to put me back on platoon. So I ended up getting back on platoon. They started me back on week 6 from there, and from there, I started up with my course, and then we got Christmas leave, so I ended up going back home. Once back in Saint Jean, I completed my course. Or actually, I should talk about Kawan. That course wasn't the platoon wasn't a very healthy one for me. The one of the sergeants, Sergeant Jerome Kawa, he knew my father, so he kind of had it out for me. He expected a lot more from me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pretty much I felt a target on my back in that platoon. I was getting hit with swipes that I shouldn't have. Like they claimed I was missing labels when I clearly had one there, but they wanted me gone. I could tell. They would take my parade boots during inspection and crease them really badly, like breaking the polish off the boot and then dropping them.
Right.
And yeah, I had really good parade boots. I learned from my dad, and learned in cadets as well. But no, he would destroy them, and yeah, the staff had it out for me. I felt attacked in that platoon, but I eventually managed to finish off and get out of Saint Jean. Ended up at CFLTC, the
Mm-hmm.
and it started off not bad. It was different environment. I didn't kind of at the start I didn't feel like anyone was watching me at the start. Yeah, it was okay for the first few weeks, and then started noticing this one officer. I forget her rank and name, but I started getting pulled into her office a bit more. Um, I miss.
So wait, Corbin. When you're now at Borden, what happened to the charges?
They were still there, but I really had no information on it.
Okay, so you're just in limbo. No idea. Just is something going to happen? Is something not going to happen? You're still on course,
At
so
that
for you, it's
time,
just carry on.
yeah, I knew they were there, but I really had no information. I don't know how to explain it. It was, yeah, they were still there, but I just didn't know what was going on with it. It was, yeah, for first few weeks quiet, and then I started getting pulled in by the female officer. She's, I can already tell she has something against me, and I think the first time I got pulled in the office, she brought up the fact that I had charges against me, and that was hard. After that one, I felt again yet another target on my back.
Mm-hmm.
It hit me pretty hard being there. It was I didn't feel part of the military at that point.
Hmm.
It
Like you felt like you were going through the motions, like you're wearing a uniform, but nobody there really wanted you there.
yeah,
Is that right?
it felt like no one, like there's a few guys that were in the shack with me that I got along with and I still do to this day, but I was called a cancer by some people, that I shouldn't be in the shack with them. I should be off in a different building. So yeah, that made it hard for me.
Yeah. Yeah. No wonder. No wonder. So you're on course. Now, this sounds like you were imposed restrictions without charge. So, Catherine, back to you. I thought you had to be charged in order to have restrictions on you. Am I wrong with that?
No, you do have to be charged. And Corbin eventually faced a court martial that he was acquitted on. So the court martial,
Okay.
he did go to court martial and was cleared.
Okay.
Yeah, his court martial decision came down in June of 2022.
Okay, but that means he was okay. So let's clarify the timeline then. Corbin, you were out of the forces before 2022.
Yeah.
So what led to you leaving the forces? Did you pass your course? Was it the injury? What happened?
No, what pushed me to leave the forces was I got sent home for COVID. They couldn't run classes at the start of it. So I got sent back home to BC, and I sat there for a while, and from there I guess being away from a base at the time, it made me realize I was going through like the emotions from mental stress now that I was distanced from it. I didn't realize how bad it was until I fully released, but no, I was, as my wife put it, she noticed I would have days of just, I wouldn't get out of bed. I was I was stressed about things that weren't happening, like no information on the court martial. It was definitely eating away at me, and it was a lot of stress, I guess, that
Mm-hmm.
slowly kind of pushed me down different dark paths. But yeah, once I was supposed to go back to Borden after the COVID leave, I guess I would put it. I ended up getting sick before I was supposed to fly out. So the airline actually refused to let me fly. So from there, I ended up getting arrested for AWOL.
Oh, jeez.
After I'd contact my corporal in Borden, hey, this is what happened. He said, all right, I'll pass this on, and that's all I heard from there. And then I get MPs coming to my in-laws' property for me, and that's from there I get arrested and brought back to base, and then I'm put in isolation in the shacks, and in this is in Comox there.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was that experience kind of made me start hating the military. It
Only start that just then?
it I
Because you've been getting, from what it sounds like, you've been getting your ass kicked from the start. And I guess putting things in context, right? For those that have forgotten, you're literally in the middle of the COVID mandate craziness that was going on in the CAF. And, me and Catherine have covered on numerous episodes the amount of abuse that was going on. Now, yours wasn't necessarily mandate related, but the culture was there.
Yeah.
Screw this guy, get this guy out. You're a cancer. You don't want to play ball. Screw you. These are common themes that we've heard and I've heard for now the last few years. So from what I understand, you just eventually said, okay, I'm out. It's a voluntary release. You had enough. I want out. So now that you're voluntarily released, you're out of the forces. What then led to a conversation with Veterans Affairs that had them offer you MAID?
So when I got out, I didn't know what I was going to do. I actually didn't find out about Veterans Affairs until my dad told me about it. He said, worst case, they'll say no, just apply. And then I started seeing a psychologist and ended up getting some claims through VAC. It took a while to get those claims through. I think they actually denied one at one point and then had to get more evidence on it, and then they finally accepted it. Yeah, no, I forget why I reached out, but it was, well, not why, but I needed help with something like for mental health. I was going through it. I think at that point I already had 4 suicide attempts at that point, and I just wanted to get through it. Yeah, so I reached out, and it wasn't my case manager that picked up or that called me. It was some other woman, and we talked about my file. I knew it was VAC because they had the information she was talking to me about, and we were going through options, and then she offered MAID as an option, and it came off as it was an offer.
That's unreal.
And
Was it a shock for you to hear that from somebody at Veterans Affairs, just offer medically assisted death?
I thought they were there to help. It it was definitely a shock to me. The way it came off is she sounded like she was just trying to help, but it MAID wasn't an option for me. I got mad at her, and I hung up, and my wife was right there, and she asked what happened, and I explained it to her, and I was in disbelief that I was offered MAID. I wanted help, not I got people in my life that I got to take care of, and that wasn't the option I was looking for.
When you look at it, Dave, here's someone who's already got 4 attempts on his own, the most vulnerable of the vulnerable, to be offered such a service, if you want to call it.
Service, yeah.
Yeah. Which is why when I heard the story, it was like, no, this one can't go quietly. This one needs to be brought to the public's attention. This wrong needs to be righted.
Absolutely. Corbin, I really appreciate you sharing that, man. I imagine it's not easy to go through stories like that, but the fact that you're able to share, and this is the first time we share a story like this on the podcast, my hope is that it really starts to rattle some cages, because right now, although there's been hearings at the governmental level, I think it's just all talk and no action until there's serious public outcry. And folks like yourself are going to help frame that narrative to say, hey, like, we're not, and I'm not looking to have assistance in dying. I'm fighting for my life. I'm calling for help. and the offer is MAID. I'm having a hard time dealing with this, because is it on the table for all of us now? The next time I chat with my Veterans Affairs case manager, I'm having a bad day. Are they going to say, well, have you ever thought about taking your own life? We can help. Don't worry, we'll take care of your kids. No, that's not how I envision my country being. And so I really appreciate you sharing your story here.
And the worst part of the report that came out was they basically brushed it aside and said it was only one veteran. And they already knew at that point, because it had been in the public eye, that there was more than one while they were having those hearings. And there were veterans that applied to be heard at those hearings that were denied because they didn't want the extent of this to get out.
Well, like all things, when you decide to try and suppress it, it's like a pressure cooker. Pressure just builds, right? And this is unacceptable. This is like wholesale unacceptable. So Catherine, what's the next steps? How does the pressure now pop off and we actually get this as something that politicians need to actually listen to and actually make some changes towards?
Right. So Corbin has filed a claim in the federal court against Veterans Affairs for what has happened to him. He's asked for a quite a large number in damages. The Department of Justice has the statement of claim, and we're now awaiting their response to it. So that's the legal side of it. We're expecting the response here in the next couple of weeks. It needs to be talked about more. We need to not accept the Liberal Party's excuse that, oh, that was just a one-time thing, it doesn't happen anymore. I don't believe that. And Corbin is basically leading the charge that if we have more veterans that this has happened to, we need to bring more lawsuits. Because it seems to me that VAC and the CAF will only listen when something gets put into the court. They've shut their ears otherwise. They pretend that it's not a problem. And it's unfortunate that it's reached that stage. But at this point, this is all we have, because the ombudsman have no teeth. They don't want to act on these things. Right. They should be all over this. But it's like, oh no, that's been dealt with. We're good. And it's like, no, we're not good, because it still exists out there. And I shudder to think how many veterans might have quietly accepted their help.
Yeah, this is a whole can of worms that I think we're just opening. Mm-hmm. Considering, okay, legislation came in 2016. It's only really kind of taken foot during this new Liberal government. So that's roughly like 8 years or so. To dig into that and get deeper into that rabbit hole of, are there, veterans that have actually gone down this road? And then is there a program here now that is installed at Veterans Affairs to guide veterans along? And then the big question is why? Why would you want to try and help the folks, the individuals that literally were willing to put their lives on the line for the country? Why would you even want to consider giving them assistance in dying?
To be really harsh, a dead veteran's cheaper than a live one. To be really blunt and really harsh, that's the reality.
Yeah.
And it's not acceptable. But it's in my mind, this is not acceptable.
Like, how far have we fallen is basically what it comes down to. How far have we fallen?
And it's not just veterans. Now CAF itself, if you're still in, you can have it. And keep in mind, it is not legal right now to have medical assistance in dying for strictly mental health issues. Corbin is not been someone with a critical TBI whose brain is regressing as every day that goes by, or he hasn't had severe injuries that are, really impacting his life. Corbin's issues were mental health issues, and this was their solution.
Yeah, this is dystopian. This is pure dystopian nightmare stuff that really smart people like Jordan Peterson have been talking about, that I just kind of thought as hyperbolic, but hearing it straight from the horse's mouth from you, Corbin, this is a reality that I hope no other veteran has to experience. So um, let's go with some final thoughts. So Corbin, I'll go over to you. Before we sign off, what are some final thoughts that you'd like to share with the veteran community and the Hard to Kill podcast community?
I just I want to see a change. It's like after my father passed from suicide, it's kind of opened my mind a little bit, or not a little bit, a lot. To it just needs to more attention to being offered MAID, to just where people's minds are at. Like it's yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And the attention, right, is critical here. To brush it off, say, oh, what's only a handful? Yeah, that's the problem. It's a handful. Mm-hmm. Should be none, in my opinion. And if it doesn't get resolved, it only gets worse. So again, Corbin, thanks for sharing your thoughts, and best of luck in the future. So Catherine, where do we go now? Final thoughts, and also if you could give us some updates on some of the other lawsuits as well, mm-hmm. That'd be great.
Well, to me, the best antidote to darkness is sunshine. So we've got to keep talking about this. We can't let it get forgotten. We need to point out that it's not just the civilian population, but our veteran population are being offered a solution that should not come across. I've taken care of veterans and military members for 10 years now. I know their stories. I know what they go through. This is so wrong. The first time I heard about it, it was wrong, and it remains wrong. But we need to make sure that the Canadian public knows that one of the Liberals' ideas of taking care of our veterans is to kill them off. As for what's going on with the other lawsuits, the two big mass torts on the abuse of power, we're going into case management meeting at the end of April because the Crown continued to not cooperate, and I called him on it, and he wasn't too happy. So we'll see. We'll see how we do with the two of us and a judge at the end of the month. And also, we are receiving, I'm sorry to say it, hundreds of people are contacting us regarding our vaccine injury lawsuit.
Hundreds.
Yep. And it's bad. It's bad. There's some very severe injuries. Well, there's been deaths, as you know, but there's people are living with some pretty severe injuries on that as well. We're also getting lots of traction on our two hearing lawsuits because, first of all, there is an additive that was in diesel and jet fuel that caused a chemical damage to the inner ear. And there's also a second lawsuit. They know that hearing protection is defective, and they are not going to change it. So I'm going to force them to change it.
That's an interesting one.
Mm-hmm.
All hearing protection?
Pretty much.
What specific types? So the foam crappy things that they used to give us on the range, be like, yeah, and then they'd fall out, you wouldn't notice, and then your ear would be ringing for 3 days?
3M,
that stuff?
3M just settled a $6.01 billion lawsuit in the United States for their defective hearing. Because they knew it was defective and they sold it to the DOD, and the DOD knew it was defective and still continued to use it. And we've got the same situation in Canada. I've been in touch with the lawyers down there, so we're bringing it here. I understand they're bringing it in Australia as well. So, yeah, that's a class action.
That's why I bought my own.
Right. And the other one we're working on is lead in the water. Especially CFB Edmonton, we've got lead in the water being fed to the PMQs and the elementary school.
Oh, God, that's so bad.
Yeah. So when Bill Blair's talking about correcting the infrastructure, yeah, I am trolling him to say, you're going to put money into fixing the lead pipes. As well as the asbestos and hantavirus and everything else that's in those buildings.
Unreal.
Yeah.
Unreal. And then likely, I'm just going to throw this out there, there's likely going to be some form of lawsuit for burn pits. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yes, it's on my radar. Yes, it is.
Just throwing that out there. Getting people warmed up. Start getting your medical files ready. All you Afghan vets and Iraq vets that hung out around burn pits and all had the same idea. Like, this is probably not good for my health. Yeah. Yep. Well, let's make sure we're ready.
Join into the file. And one of the fun ones is we are bringing a lawsuit against General Wayne Eyre for blocking comments on his Twitter account.
Oh,
the precedent has been set. Rebel News set that precedent. If you're a public figure, you cannot block comments, and he has done so. I've warned him.
Yeah,
I sent him a warning. Said, do you want to unblock now, or do you want to wait till you're sued again?
Mm-hmm.
So apparently he likes seeing his name as a defendant.
I mean, I saw it and like I trolled him a little bit too, just because, well, you bring it on yourself. One thing that I find really interesting is that politicians and those in public arena, they haven't really figured out the new town square, which is the online apps, right? Twitter. It's a public square. So if you deny access, you're denying access to the public who you serve. That's a big no-no. And I just find it hard to believe that they haven't figured that out yet. But to I guess, play devil's advocate, could a public official just not have an account and then, right? They don't have to be on Twitter. Like, there's nothing else. So therefore, that would be the natural solution for some folks that just don't want to be in that arena. So I still don't understand why folks can't reason with the fact that a guy like General Eyre, who's a smart guy, just not well liked. Well, just, don't have an account.
Or don't read the comments.
Or don't read, or be a big boy and don't read the freaking comments. They shouldn't affect your job.
But here's the thing.
Like, I barely read my comments. I get 3. I'm like, nah.
Well, here's the thing, Dave. If he doesn't like what I say to him on Twitter when he does something stupid, how's he going to handle when I've got him under oath being questioned for days at a time with some very tough questions?
I want to see that bald head sweat.
I'll offer him Kleenexes because, if you can't handle some comments on X, you're never going to handle cross-examination.
Well,
you're not,
I mean,
because I'm going to be far worse than anything that ever got posted on Twitter.
If there's anything that I'm confident in, is that our generals will not stand up to public scrutiny or any kind of scrutiny, because they rarely ever get scrutinized. So therefore, they're not used to being publicly challenged, because they've always had these big positions, and how dare you question the general or the colonel or whatever it may be. So it's going to be really interesting to see. And I can't wait for it. Me too. I think everybody here listening is waiting for it too, based on the comments. That'll be interesting. If
it was possible, I could sell a lot of tickets for a fundraiser to watch his deposition. It's not possible, but
Indeed.
But the transcript will be filed with the court, which makes it a public document, and people can at least read.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, Catherine, Corbin, thanks so much for hopping on the show, telling your stories, and giving us context as to what's going on in Canada with respect to MAID and the veteran community. And folks, don't forget, liking this podcast, subscribing to the podcast, and hitting the bell notification if you're on YouTube helps a lot with getting this out widely to the masses. And if you're enjoying the show, share it with somebody. This is how we grow the podcast, and this is how we get more folks hearing these amazing stories. So that's it for me. Thanks again for tuning in. Don't forget, train hard, fight easy. See you on the next one. Peace.